All right, welcome to the Week 10 recap. Starting to get a little flow for this, a little bit of a rhythm. So thank you if you are a returning viewer. If you are a first-time viewer, you know what I need you to do. Go ahead and subscribe and drop a like. Thank you to everyone who does that on a routine basis. And to those who haven't done it, I promise when you press that button, it might not feel good for you, but it'll mean a lot to me. So please do it. We're going to jump right into the first game of the week, which was the Falcons and Colts game. We'll talk about Broncos Raiders at the end. By now, most people have probably looked at stats and heard some takes from that. So I'll bury that toward the end. And if you're still around at that time, we will go over that then. I think it's only right to lead the show off with talking about Jonathan Taylor and the insane run, no pun intended, that he has been on, just doing things that kind of seem unhuman. 32 carries, 244 on the ground, and 3 touchdowns. No receiving volume needed, but he still added 3 catches and 42 yards through the air. He's just every single time he's in your lineup, you think he's going to score 30 plus, and every time you see him against you in your opponent's lineup, you're like, shoot, is this guy going to be the reason I lose this week? He's just like if we were to redraft today, he would have to be the first overall pick, which is he's always been a talented player. He's always been an elite prospect. To see him put it together like this with the offense humming the way it is, he is playing such a large role in that process happening. And as someone who has a few shares of him, not a ton, it's just been crazy to see the numbers he puts up. It's every week he's ripping off an 80-yard touchdown run. At least that's how it feels. He's insane. The pass catchers, nice to see Tyler Warren get more involved after not being a focal point of this passing offense the past few weeks. Started off super involved and then recently kind of trailed off a little bit. This past week sees 10 targets, 8 catches, 99 yards against the best defense against tight ends in fantasy this year. So that was super encouraging. And then very quietly, the past 5 weeks, it's not Michael Pittman who's the number one pass catcher on this team. It's Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce, their past 5 games, has a 23% target share. Michael Pittman in that same span has a 22% target share. During that span, Michael Pittman is wide receiver 10 and Alec Pierce is wide receiver 14. Josh Downs, wide receiver 36, so a low end, wide receiver 3, high end, wide receiver 4. I think Alec Pierce is a guy that isn't going to be that expensive to acquire. There are going to be some fantasy managers out there who don't really want to give the respect to Alec Pierce he might deserve. I'd imagine he's available in a lot of leagues, and if he's not, I think he can be acquired fairly cheaply. I think you might be able to send like a wide receiver 3 type guy, even Pittman for Pierce plus. I'm not saying I prefer Pierce to Pittman from this point forward, but if I can get something on top of Pierce that is of strong value for Pittman, I think I would do that. Like if I could go Pittman for Alec Pierce and Trey Benson, who I think is going to be pretty good upon his return. If I could do Pittman for Pierce and Dowdle, I think I would go ahead and do that, especially if I was weak at running back. I think I could get a good boost there at running back without taking much of a hit at wide receiver. I think this run Alec Pierce is on is pretty legit. 4 catches, 84 yards and a touchdown. Over to the Falcons. Obviously, incredibly disappointing to see Tyler Algier take away 2 touchdowns from Bijan Robinson. That's going to happen. I'm not concerned. There are a lot of Bijan managers I'm seeing in my comments talking about trading him. What are we going to do? Like he's the running back 5 over the past 5 weeks. So I would honestly just be checking in with the Bijan manager in my league and seeing, hey, like don't just go asking him straight for Bijan, but kind of get a gauge for how he's feeling about him. I think the discourse around him, maybe we're having some FOMO, seeing Jahmyr Gibbs pop off, seeing Jonathan Taylor pop off, seeing Devon Achane pop off, and it's like, well, Bijan Robinson hasn't done that against the Monday night game against the Bills. And lost in all that is the fact that he's still a top 5 running back the past 5 weeks, if you exclude that big game. So I think that's kind of a prisoner of the moment mentality. And I think a lot of people who have Jahmyr Gibbs felt that same way, right? He had a few rough games. He's not being as involved in the passing game. And then all of a sudden, you look today and he had 3 touchdowns and 172 yards. So moving on to Atlanta's pass catchers, Drake London is the wide receiver 1 the past 5 weeks. He was my wide receiver 3 entering the season, so it's kind of nice to see him establish himself among the upper echelon, at least lately. Who knows if it'll continue, but I have no reason to believe it won't. During that span, the past 5 weeks, 37% target share. He's getting 1.3 end zone targets a game. So he's a touchdown machine who is involved at every part of the field. I don't think you can acquire him for any sort of discount anymore. You definitely could have through the first handful of weeks. That opportunity is probably gone. Kyle Pitts, really encouraging as well, at least from a target standpoint. I think he might be a decent buy at tight end. He has a 24% target share the past 5 weeks, but he's only tight end 17, just not converting that into a ton of fantasy points. Maybe some of that's touchdown regression due his way, like positive regression. Against the Colts, 5 targets, but only caught 2 of them for 38 yards. I think Pitts may even be available in some leagues. I think he's going to probably finish the season better than what he's been doing the past handful of weeks. Caleb Williams led the Bears to a comeback against the Giants, 14 points in the fourth quarter. They're now 6-3. On Monday morning, Brian Daboll was fired. Have some thoughts on that. I might need to do a whole separate NFL focus show, not just fantasy focus, because I do think when we're so focused on fantasy football, we lose sight of a lot of really good actual NFL headlines and storylines. But as far as the NFL fantasy perspective goes, Caleb Williams, really impressive on the ground. This is why you want mobile quarterbacks. Caleb Williams only had 220 through the air, 1 touchdown, but he adds 63 rushing yards on the ground and a touchdown. The past 5 weeks, Caleb Williams is the QB6. DeAndre Swift is the RB8 despite missing a game. And Rome Odunze finally has a good game. 6 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown. That's a little harsh. I think he's been pretty dang good. Just the past 5 weeks hasn't been, and a lot of people have been selling him, panicking on him. I think at this point, we're 10 weeks into the season. There's not much that's going to happen that's going to surprise us. There will be some things, but betting on them and picking which developments are going to be new, which developments are going to spring up the latter half of the season, that's going to be pretty difficult to predict. And I think going away from guys who were really good in the first half, if their usage is still the same, which for Rome Odunze, it is, he's going to be solid for you. So I think the buy window is open for a little bit, kind of slammed shut. For Swift and Monangai, if we're just looking on a snap count basis, Swift had double Monangai's snaps. He ran 23 routes to Monangai's 16, was out-targeted 7-1. Short down and distance, he got 4 snaps, Monangai got 1. 2-minute snaps, Swift got 11, Monangai got 2. So pretty encouraging sign there for DeAndre Swift managers, who finishes as RB15 on the week. For going to receivers, Odunze was top 8 this week. DJ Moore got banged up, left early. I think he came back, but just wasn't as effective. He only ran 66% of the routes, which was second on the team for receivers. And then tight ends real quick, we'll touch on that. Colston Loveland got more routes than Cole Kmet. He also got more targets. Pretty solid day, I guess. 4 grabs, 55 yards. Second leading receiver on the day. Luther Burden, also solid day, I guess, considering it's his first game back. He had 3 targets, caught all 3 of them for 51 yards, Over to the New York Giants. Obviously, biggest news is Jackson Dart's injury, a concussion. When he is playing, he is a must-start guy at this point. QB3 on the week, despite leaving with an injury. And if we're going the past 5 weeks, which is a time frame I like to use, I think that's a good chunk to just kind of carry through the year. I don't really want weeks 1 through 6, 1 through 5, influencing what I think of a player if things have changed halfway through the year. So let's just go with the a 5 week segment that's most recent. I think that's a pretty good sweet spot. He's the QB1 during that time. There's been no fantasy quarterback who scored more points during that time frame than Jackson Dart. So if he's playing, if he's suiting up, if he's putting a helmet on, he should be in a lineup in every league. Really, really encouraging for people who stash Tyrone Tracy. Obviously, Jackson Dart is going to take away some of that rushing volume, but when he's in the game, it kind of makes, when you have a mobile quarterback, it makes some things easier on your running backs. Defenses have to account for a different rushing threat. They're not solely focused on if they pass, I'm looking here. If they run, I'm looking here. There's just more things for the defense to think about. So I do think there is a positive correlation between mobile quarterbacks and running back success. I'm sure there's some studies out there that prove that theory. 14 for 71. So what's that on average for Tyrone Tracy? 5 yards a carry. You got to love that. Devin Singletary, 8 carries for 20 yards, 2.5 on average. And then from a pass catching standpoint, Singletary was targeted 3 times, had a long one, caught one for 40 yards. Tracy was targeted just twice. If we're looking at their snap breakdown, that's week 6 through 10. Week 10, Tracy outsnapped Singletary 66% to 34%. If we're looking at raw numbers, that's 46 snaps to Singletary's 24. Last week, that was kind of flipped. It was closer to 50-50. Singletary had 31 and Tracy had 25. So going forward, I like I like Tracy as a low-end flex option in plus matchups. Not so much against tougher matchups, but, and I would bump him down a bit if Jackson Dart were to miss time. Moving on to their receivers, I think Wan'Dale Robinson is now a fine flex play, especially in plus matchups. When I say plus matchups, I mean good matchups against weaker teams. He's not someone who I don't think he's going to have a very high ceiling, but if we look the past 5 weeks, he is a top 12 wide receiver. He is wide receiver 12, actually, since week 6. So that's like calling a guy who's ranked top 12, like not saying he's a must start feels kind of weird. I don't think he's must start, but I think he's a guy you can comfortably put in your lineup. During that span, he's averaging over 8 targets a game. Theo Johnson becomes a little interesting here. He had a decent game. He's a top 12 option. Tight end landscape is pretty poor. And over the past 5 weeks, he's averaging about 6 targets a game. That's top 11 in the league during that span. So you can go ahead and fire him up just because at tight end you can do a whole lot worse than Theo Johnson. Was there a more surprising result than Bills Dolphins? Pretty unreal to lose by 17 points to the Miami Dolphins. James Cook, 53 yards, had a really bad fumble that kind of just kept the Bills down in a spot where they didn't really have much of a hope. I don't really know how much to take away from here other than the Bills have kind of had a weird season, losing to the Falcons. The Patriots look legit. I know they've had a weak schedule, but that loss doesn't seem as catastrophic. But this one, losing to the Dolphins, I guess this is the classic you underestimate a team, and the NFL this year has been, the definition of any given Sunday. Anything can happen. Don't really want to spend too much time on this. Khalil Shakir, 9 targets, catches 7 of them, 58 yards. Keon Coleman, good to see him more involved. It felt like he was kind of falling out of favor. They were in a pass-heavy game script. They're not always going to be. If I can use this opportunity to put Coleman in a trade package for something of value back, I would. I don't think you're going to be able to. And then Dalton Kincaid, he got hurt. Not sure what things look like for him going forward. I'm still trying to fire him up every week if I can. Looks like he's week to week after suffering a hamstring injury, so looks like you might be out of luck there. Dawson Knox would take his role. I'm not super excited about him for fantasy purposes. And then rookie tight end Jackson Hawes, I believe he's a rookie, caught a touchdown. Yes, drafted in the 5th round this year. For the Dolphins, I kind of want to spend some time giving some love to Devon Achane. Like, the dude is insane. 22 carries, averages 8 a pop, breaks off 2 long touchdowns, a classic 6 targets, 6 catches, 50 yards through the air. He's the RB3 the past 5 weeks. He's the RB3 over the course of the entire season. His floor is incredibly high. Feels like he's scoring 15 points at minimum every week, and that's closer to like 20. He averages 21 fantasy points per game. Like, he's awesome. He is maybe my favorite asset in all of fantasy football. And then from receivers, I think Jalen Waddle deserves some love too. That past 5 week span we like to talk about, he is wide receiver 8. He's getting 24% of the targets. So it's not like he's doing it on a insane Drake London type target share. We talked about Drake London had a 37% target share the past 5 weeks. Jalen Waddles is at 24%, but he's still raking in yards. He's catching passes that are going his way. He's getting a good bit of end zone targets. During that span, he gets about half of one per game, which accounts for 40% of his teams. Love Jalen Waddle. If you made a trade for him or if you drafted him, he's been just awesome since the Tyreek Hill injury. Definitely a bummer of a day for the Ravens, at least from a fantasy standpoint. Lamar Jackson, not super efficient. Let's give some credit to the Vikings defense. They made the Lions look like crap when they played them in week 9. Ravens were able to overcome it from an NFL standpoint. They won the game pretty convincingly. At least that's how it felt for the few bits of it and pieces of it I watched. Fantasy, not great. Derrick Henry had a solid day, at least from an opportunity and usage standpoint. Justice Hill's touchdown literally came from the 1 yard line, so goal line carry taken away from Derrick Henry there. I would be buying. Lamar Jackson, 40 yards on the ground, give or take. I don't think there's too much to take away from here. Zay Flowers did what he's been doing all year. It's kind of what we expect from him at this point. And then Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, each with 5 targets apiece. They combine for 31 yards. Andrews scores the touchdown. I don't know, man. I don't really want a piece of any of these guys from a tight end standpoint. Mark Andrews the past 5 weeks, tight end 20. Isaiah Likely the past 5 weeks, same amount of games, tight end 45. I think it's Zay Flowers, and then you can roll the dice rather with Andrews or Likely. I would pick them in that order, but there's probably a streaming tight end available on your waiver wire that's at least as good or at least as productive as Mark Andrews. For the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy, pretty good from a fantasy standpoint. 48 rushing yards, 250 through the air, a touchdown and a pick. I think on the day, quarterback 14, so not as great as last week. If we take the past 2 weeks, he's a top 10 guy. If you were streaming him, you were probably hoping for a bit more success, but could have been a lot worse. Now, with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, I wanted to talk about that for a second. Aaron Jones is out-snapping Jordan Mason 57% and 41% the past 2 weeks. If we just include this past week, he outsnapped him 72% to 23%. That could have had to do with them trailing and him being the pass catching back they have there, but it's not a 1A, 1B split backfield situation. It's Aaron Jones now, and Jordan Mason is seemingly an afterthought. And in that time span, Aaron Jones, the past 2 weeks since he's returned, actually, let's go back to the past 3 weeks. Let's include that ugly Chargers game. Even with that gross game, he's running back 21. If we exclude that game, he's running back 13. Jordan Mason is outside the top 50. I don't think Mason is a drop. I think he's a drop candidate depending on who else is on your waiver wire. You can totally go ahead and drop him if there is a guy on your waivers that you want to pick up, like Alec Pierce. I doubt he's still there. I'm not in any redraft leagues. I'm all dynasty, so I'm kind of out of touch on who's available. But yeah, Aaron Jones is the guy. And then from a receiver standpoint, I would be looking to buy Justin Jefferson, but I'm kind of adjusting my expectations. Like, I don't know if he's a top 6, top 8 guy the rest of the way. I think top 10 I can get with that. I think I can get with top 8, just not higher than that. Been really disappointing. JJ McCarthy, he's like the easy scapegoat. There's the video of, the psycho, he's nodding, looking like he's foaming at the mouth. People either love it or hate it. I just don't see it from a real life standpoint and a fantasy standpoint. I get he's a gamer. He can make plays. He's mobile. He's still only a handful of starts into his career. Like, he hasn't even started 5 games, I don't think. Let's give him a break. But for this game we play fantasy football, I have Jordan Addison bumped way down. Carson Wentz was doing a much better job getting him the ball. Like, Addison had 11 targets, caught 3 of them. Justin Jefferson had 12 targets, caught 4 of them. Jalen Naylor hauls in a 62-yard pass, 124 yards total, and a touchdown. But you're not starting Jalen Naylor. It's kind of just like an outlier. So pretty gross situation in general for the Vikings. I want to say about the Jets is Breece Hall is a top 12 running back the past 5 weeks. And if we look over the course of the entire season, he is RB9. No, excuse me. He's running back 12 over the past 5 weeks, and he's RB12 overall. From a receiver standpoint, Garrett Wilson is out another 3 to 4 weeks. I don't want any part of this passing game, including Mason Taylor. Past 5 weeks, Mason Taylor's tight end 34. Breece Hall, and that's it. Justin Fields, no longer fantasy relevant to me. If he's stashed, I think you can go ahead and drop him. He will have some good weeks just because he has that floor with rushing, but I don't want to count on it. This offense is gross. Let's move on to the Browns. Dillon Gabriel, pretty solid, at least in terms of taking care of the ball. 2 touchdowns, no picks. He did take 6 sacks, only 167 yards passing, completion percentage just above 50. So the bar is pretty low for Dillon Gabriel if I'm saying it's pretty solid. Quinshon Judkins, not a great day for him, but he did get you 22 carries and 3 targets. So 25 opportunities. I know you guys don't win your league based off of, like, it's not a points per opportunity league, but I'm not moved by this in any negative fashion or manner. Receiving, Jerry Jeudy, pretty encouraging here. He's receiving 8 targets a game the past 5 weeks. He had that one blip on the radar where it wasn't looking very good. Obviously, Dillon Gabriel likes to look at his tight ends and running backs, but that kind of changed here. Jeudy saw 12. Nobody else saw more than 7. Harold Fannin had 7, and then Tillman in his first game back had 4. I think Jerry Jeudy's available in a handful of leagues. I wouldn't have dropped him. It's easy for me to say that right now. And I'm not super excited to start him every week. But after posting a top 12 finish this week heading into Monday night, he definitely seems like a more appealing option, especially if you're of the belief that the Browns aren't very good. They're going to be passing the ball a lot. Jerry Jeudy's their best pass catcher. I think that's been the case all year. It's just he hadn't been being used in that manner. And if we're going to be honest, the quarterback situation is bad. I do think I would have him over Jordan Addison the rest of the way. Guys in that vein. So not sure how much of a takeaway that is for you, but I do think he can be usable as a spot start to kind of get through some injuries and bye weeks. Travion Henderson, the RB4 on the week heading into Monday Night Football, and they kind of let him loose. 83% of the snaps. He carried the ball 14 times for $147 and 2 touchdowns, 2 long ones. This is why they drafted him with the top 40 pick. And this is why so many fantasy managers were up in arms all year about his usage and the opportunities he was getting or wasn't getting. Keep in mind, in this game, he only had 1 target. They really haven't even tapped into the type of player he can be as a pass catcher out of the backfield. And their schedule down the stretch is about as easy as it gets. I would be buying the hype. I'm not paying ridiculous prices to go get him. But if there's a Travion Henderson manager out there who is like, okay, I spent a pretty good draft pick on this guy. He's been disappointing. I've been holding all year long. I want out. I'll be the guy that humors that manager and gets in on Travion Henderson. Just because, again, when you're playing this game of fantasy football, you want guys who have matchup winning upside. If there's a guy who can go get you 28 fantasy points on 15 opportunities, a guy like Travion Henderson, I want players like that, especially if I'm an underdog going against, we're talking about the most stacked team in your league. Maybe that's you. If so, tip of the cap. If that's not you, which odds are it's not, just because there's 10 players in your league, 12 players in your league, and one of you. I want guys like Jameson Williams. That's my appeal with him, is he can have a lot of boom games, right? Travion Henderson, same way. Are they more volatile? Yes. Is there value to having a stable floor and just consistent production? Yes, but that home run ability is really valuable in fantasy, and I want a piece of that. Receiving standpoint, Stephon Diggs continues to have pretty steady production. If we're looking at the past 5 weeks, he's getting a pretty healthy target share, 21%, ranks as a top 18 wide receiver the past 5 weeks. So kind of what we expected after that one Bills game when he started to pop off against his former team. Low end, mid to low end, wide receiver 2. I think he's a weekly start. Mac Hollins, couple good games in that stretch as well. He's a low end wide receiver 3, but I think a lot of that has come just from 2 games. I'm not interested in starting him. I don't mind rostering him if you have 2 tight ends and 2 quarterbacks. You don't need that. If you have a backup kicker or a backup defense, I'd rather have Mac Hollins than them. But I also kind of view him as like a roster clogger. I don't know how often I would feel very good about starting him. He is running more routes than Demario Douglas, so Douglas is 100% droppable. And I think his roster percentage, not sure the term for that, would probably reflect that. For the Buccaneers, Emeka Egbuka back to his form, back to kind of the start he was having over the course of the entire season. I know he missed some time. He's back up to wide receiver 10. He had the 3rd best wide receiver performance of the week heading into Monday Night Football. And then Tez Johnson, over the past 5 weeks, he's a top 20 wide receiver. I think you can start him on a weekly basis, at least until Chris Godwin comes back. But he's not coming back. Last report I saw was late November, early December. So go ahead and fire up Tez Johnson. He's been a nice add. Don't want to say league winner, but when it's all said and done, if you add a guy who winds up being a top 20 guy, kind of hard to not call him that. And then a guy I want to focus on as well is Cade Otton. Past 5 weeks, he is tight end 14. Past 2 weeks, I'm tripping. This week, he was tight end 6. 82% of the routes, 28% of the targets. Over the past 5 weeks, he's averaging 8 a game. Against the Patriots, caught 9 balls for 82 yards, saw 12 targets. I think you can feel pretty confident firing him up in your lineups. Again, as long as Chris Godwin is out. Low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2 is the ballpark I'd put Cade Otton in. Just when you think the Carolina Panthers are going to contend for a playoff spot, right? They beat the Cowboys and they beat the Falcons 30-0 and they beat the Packers. They go and drop a double-digit loss to the Saints. They're only able to score 7 points. Bryce Young, again, am I a hater? He's just not very good. And I think that's being very respectful and putting it lightly. No shade. If he saw me do my job, maybe he would say I'm not very good at my job, but I don't get paid millions of dollars to do my job. So Rico Dowdle, 18 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown. So not very efficient. Kind of felt like they sold out to stop the run. Said, here, Bryce Young, beat us. And Bryce Young couldn't. I haven't rewatched the replay of Bryce Young's interception, but go watch that. That was one of the worst picks I've seen in a couple of years. Maybe that was a miscommunication between the receiver and the passer. In any case, Ted McMillan somehow still gets 11 PPR points out of it. Jatavion Sanders in tight end premium leagues, deeper ones, you can probably use him, but I'm not excited to. And Chuba Hubbard, I think, is a fine buy in Dynasty. You can probably get him for like a 3rd or a late 2nd. I'm okay doing that. I still like Chuba a lot, but as far as the rest of this season goes, I think he's cooked. For the Saints, Tyler Shuck, 19-27, 282, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Chris Olave gets the volume that we wanted him to get after the Rashid Shaheed trade. 8 targets, catches 5 of them, including a sick one-hander, 104 and a touchdown. Again, it is the Panthers, but no Rashid Shaheed. Tyler Shuck's favorite option now, small sample, looks to be Chris Olave. And then again, Juwan Johnson. We keep talking about him as a low-end tight end 1. Past 5 weeks, he's tight end 6, more of a mid-range tight end 1. For going over the course of the season, tight end 6. So keep firing up Juwan Johnson. He's going to have some bummers, but I think he has a decent enough floor. And at the tight end position, sometimes that's all we can really ask for. Wanted to touch on Alvin Kamara as well. RB16 on the day. He had a bunch of opportunities, 25, over 100 yards. His best game of the season. He's a really interesting case because we talk about him, myself included, I'm guilty, we talk about him as if he's been worthless in fantasy. He's the wide receiver 24. Like, he is a low end RB2. He's not someone you're excited to start every week, but like, again, running back 24. Did I call him a wide receiver just now? RB 24, like he's averaging 9.7 PPR points per game. Again, not great, but you can win a championship putting a guy like that in your flex. Do you want your flex to be stronger? Yeah, but I think Alvin Kamara is a decent buy. He's got a really easy playoff schedule. Am I excited to start him again? No, but he's been productive enough. Jaguars, Texans. Travis Etienne, pretty good performance against a tough Texans defense. He has kind of been holding really strong on that running back, lead back role, excuse me. Bashal Tutin's actually being outsnapped by LaQuint Allen the past 4 games. Travis Etienne's the guy. After his pretty good performance, he ranks as running back 22 the past 5 weeks. 11% target share during that span. Feel pretty good about that. For Jacksonville, Jacoby Myers in his first game back, 3 targets, caught all 3 of them. Had a short touchdown pass called back. Parker Washington, 7 targets, only caught 3 of them. One of them was for a touchdown. Parker Washington, I think, is an underrated real-life player. Not sure when Brenton Strange is coming back. I think that might murk the waters a tiny bit. Make them more murky is what I was trying to get at there. And for Houston, Woody Marks, best game of the year, I believe. He ranks as a low-end running back 2 the past 5 weeks. Was top 10 on this week, week 10, heading into Monday Night Football. 14 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 18. Nick Chubb was pretty effective on the ground. I think a lot of that came late, though. And then Nico Collins, 136 receiving yards. I think better days are still ahead. I know that he routinely crushes Jacksonville. He is still receiving more than one end zone target per game over the course of the year. Over the course of the year, he averages 1 a game, but over the past 5 weeks, he's getting 1.3 per game. He's dominating target share. He's getting 27% of those. And then Dalton Schultz, during that same time span, is tight end 7. He's a mid-range tight end 1. He has another nice day. 7 grabs on 11 targets for 53 yards and a touchdown. So for tight ends, it's funny. There's a handful of elite guys when they're playing. I know Brock Bowers has been frustrating after the game against Jacksonville, has a stinker against Denver. Trey McBride is like the easy, clear top end guy this year. George Kittle, we'll talk about him in a minute, looked pretty dang good yesterday. And then after that, it's just like a handful of 10 to 15 guys who are like good enough. And that's why I'm not high on going and drafting a Sam Laporta where he was being drafted. Or like Dalton Kincaid, I guess, wasn't an expensive tight end, but we've had Jawan Johnson, Dalton Schultz, Kyle Pitts, Harold Fannin. Like, we've had so many of these perceived low-end tight end options, Kate Otten, become just suitable starters on a weekly basis. I kind of take that philosophy into fantasy football year over year. If I'm not getting Trey McBride or Brock Bowers or George Kittle, I'm not going to pay up for a tight end. They're going to be one of my last picks in the draft. Or this year you could have got Tucker Kraft in round 10 or 11, which would have been an awesome call. You know, we can't control injuries, but that's my little soapbox for the tight end position in fantasy. Speaking of Trey McBride, over the past 5 weeks, he's averaging 23.7 PPR points per game. Here are all of the fantasy flex options. So running back, receivers, tight ends, who are averaging more than him in the past 5 weeks. Jonathan Taylor, Drake London, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Devon Achane. That's it. Another rock solid, awesome day for him on Sunday. 9 grabs, 127 and a touchdown. Very encouraged by Marvin Harrison Jr. I know it kind of felt like they left a lot out on the table. I would be making moves for him. He did good against the Cowboys. Comes back to play the Seahawks. They couldn't get him the ball. He did score a touchdown. Maybe this is my opportunity to get out. Again, I want in. Let's talk about the Arizona running backs really quick here first. Amari DiMercado is interesting. It's interesting to see or think about how would we perceive him if he did not have that fumble through the end zone, right? Because he's clearly explosive. His long run on the day was 55 yards. I think an alternate reality exists where he's actually been a reliable, solid fantasy option, but all bets were off when he fumbled that ball. I really want Trey Benson to come back. I think and hope he'd be the lead back. It's probably, if I had to guess, going to be like a 65-35 split, which if he's getting passing involvement, like getting some work in the 2-minute drill, which I think would go to DeMercado. But if he is getting that, I think he would be a top 20 play. He has a really good playoff schedule. I don't know if he'd be the RB2 we want him to be when he comes back, but a usable flex, I think he could be. Then Seattle. How is JSN putting up stat lines like this when the team is passing 12 times? Sam Darnold completed 10 passes. JSN still wound up with 93 yards and a touchdown. From a rushing standpoint, both backs were efficient and effective. We'll have to wait and see a game where Seattle isn't up 38-7 entering half to see the effects of Rashid Shaheed on the run game. Rashid Shaheed, how often was he running a route during this game compared to the other receivers? Third most behind Cooper Kupp. JSN ran 95% of the routes. Rashid Shaheed ran 80. Kupp ran 82. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Both backs, I think. I like the Seattle running backs more the second half of the season than the first half. At this point, JSN strikes fear into every defensive coordinator. Sam Darnold strikes fear into every defensive coordinator. They're going to have to account to guard the pass more, especially now with a legitimate deep threat in Rashid Shaheed. I think things might open up for the Seahawks running backs, and I don't want to call them buys because I'm so turned off by their unpredictable usage, but I think I could stomach using them as throw-ins in a deal. Like if I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, I'll do that deal if you throw in Kenneth Walker. Like the Kenneth Walker manager might be like, shoot, I don't care. I'll throw him in there to get that done. I think there is a reality that exists where those guys are strong options or usable options moving forward. Just not yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Kyren Williams is now running back 9 over the course of the entire season. He's had an awesome year. 5.2 yards per carry. Only got it 14 times, but again, the Rams were up big, did not need to risk his health. So Blake Corum got a healthy 13 carries for 56 yards. I would be trying to stash Blake Corum whether I had Kyren or not, because if Kyren were to get hurt, this offense is so good that I think Corum would be an immediate top 20 play. Devontae Adams over the past 5 weeks is wide receiver 7. If we're looking over the course of the entire season, Devontae Adams is wide receiver 7. Puka Nacua is wide receiver 4. I thought this team had 2 wide receiver 1s. No, this team has 2 guys in the top 7. Very impressive what the Rams are doing. They're passing the ball to their tight ends at an insanely high clip. None of them are ranking within the top 20 for fantasy purposes, but it's just really cool to see, just from a fan of football, the levers Sean McVay is able to pull and use 13 personnel with 1 back and 3 tight ends with the weapons he has on the outside, and Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. Just some really cool stuff. As a guy who's interested in the X's and O's in football and doesn't know a lot but wants to learn more, sneaky note I'm going to sneak in here. I might start, like during the off season, trying to create some content that bridges the gap between fantasy football and real football knowledge. I might self-teach myself a lot of like football terms, get into the weeds with, formations and what teams are doing. And I think it would be interesting to kind of document my journey learning the game of football and teaching others in the process. If you're still listening at this point and that sounds interesting to you, let me know in the comments what you think of that. Then for the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey contained on the ground, but that's been the case for him in a lot of games this year. His passing game involvement was still good enough to lead you to a solid day. 8 grabs for 66 yards. Does not see the end zone today. And then same thing we just said about Blake Corum, I think is true for Brian Robinson. The gap between Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, is much smaller than the gap between Christian McCaffrey and Brian Robinson Jr., but I do think Brian Robinson would be a top 24, like RB2 floor play if Christian McCaffrey were to go down, then George Kittle, in his 4 games back, one of them being a goose egg, 2 of them being bummers, he's already up to tight end 11. Tight end 2 on the week heading into Monday Night Football. I've said from the jump, if he's playing, you're starting him. That's kind of my philosophy with my studs, for better or worse. Sometimes it burns me, but I would rather have a stud drop a bummer in my starting lineup than a stud pop off on my bench. Like, I would rather just go down with my dogs, the guys I spent good draft capital on. Maybe that's caveman mentality and not the high level analysis you want to hear. That's just my philosophy there. JMO Truthers rejoice. 7 targets, 6 grabs, a $119 and a touchdown. Dan Campbell calling plays is sick, because you see him and he's this big, hulking, menacing guy, and you think he's the typical CEO head coach, doesn't call plays on either side of the ball, kind of a more like attitude and culture guy. And then it comes out after the game that Dan Campbell took over play calling duties, and they dropped 44. And Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery each had 15 carries. And Jared Goff threw 3 touchdowns, no picks. Amon-Ra scores a touchdown. Sam Laporta gets 5 catches on 5 targets. Khalif Raymond gets 4 for 49. Like, just the ball was spread around everywhere, and everyone ate. I know it's the Commanders. Everyone's been shredding them, but to see Dan Campbell be like, no, I gotta do this, and then thrive, when I don't think a lot of people think about Dan Campbell in that vein, like a play caller. That shocked me to see that, and I think that's really cool and really exciting. I'm not going to overreact to the JMO news or the JMO stat line, but I'm such a big believer in that player. Just, if the eye test is subjective, right? But just watching that guy play, he is one of the most dynamic players in the NFL. And I like having players that I like watching on my fantasy team. So I have a bunch of JMO shares. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're not changing our opinion of him. This doesn't bump him down at all. He is still a locked and loaded bona fide stud. Past 5 weeks, not as productive as you would like him to be. He's wide receiver 11. But if you zoom out over the course of the season, wide receiver 3. JMO over the course of the season, wide receiver 34, but past 5 weeks, bumps up to wide receiver 17, so much better return on investment there. And then Sam Laporta, tight end 9, think we're still fine rolling with him. It is encouraging to see David Montgomery get this even of a workload split. I still think he's very matchup dependent. I still don't think anyone would disagree with me, when I say Jahmyr Gibbs is easily the more dynamic, more talented player, but I digress. And then for Washington, I said it in the target share takeaway video, Zach Ertz and Deebo Samuel have fine floors, right? The floor is not gonna cave out from underneath them, and they're not gonna leave you with like 2 points. They're not gonna leave you with 4 points. They're good for a good 8-point floor, but I don't think they're gonna hit their ceiling very often. And when they do, I think their ceiling is like 16 for Ertz and 20 for Deebo. So can you get away with firing up Zach Ertz in your flex spot, as your tight end? I think so. If we're looking at the past 5 weeks, he is a top 10 guy, so you can go ahead and use him. But Deebo, wide receiver 56 over the past 5 weeks. Over the course of this season, he's wide receiver 20, but that was fueled by a handful of really good games when Jaden Daniels was healthy and Terry McLaurin was on the field. Could Terry McLaurin be a sneaky buy for when he returns? This is something I worry about with the Garrett Wilsons and the Terry McLaurins and players who were just signed to big contracts on crappy teams. I don't want to disrespect the Commanders by comparing them to the Jets, but if you just shelled out all this money to a player and they're fighting with injuries and you're not playing for anything, does it benefit you more to just shut that player down and try to have him perfectly healthy for the entire offseason and next year? That's something I kind of worry about a little bit. For the running backs, same story. Excellent playoff schedule coming up, but I don't have any confidence in thinking any of these guys are going to separate. I don't know how you all feel about that. Over the past 5 weeks, Bill is getting most of the snaps, 53% of them. but Jeremy McNichols is getting practically all of the 2-minute work and all of the long distance, like passing down snaps. So if that split continues, it's like I just think there is no ceiling really for Bill unless something significant changes. I'm fine stashing him in the case that that does happen, but something tells me, something being data and the first 10 weeks of the season, something tells me that that's not going to happen. The Sunday night game, Steelers and Chargers, Aaron Rodgers kind of looks shot. I know the Chargers defense has been stepping up, playing some pretty good football recently, so I don't want to be too hard on him. I know his weapons aren't great. Jalen Warren I really like. I think you can buy him pretty cheap and he can be a rock solid RB2, a low end one, but like a consistent high floor guy. 5-week window we talk about, he's a high end RB2, running back 13 over that span. Same span, DK Metcalf is a low end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 23 to be exact, which I think is probably pretty close to what he is over the course of the season. 28 over the course of the season. Not great. Don't love DK, but he really is their best pass catching option, but it kind of works against him in a sense because the other options are so poor that defenses can sell out to take DK out of the game, and then the Steelers have nowhere else to go with the ball, and then it just kind of devolves into just one of the grossest offenses in the league right now on a per snap basis. For the Chargers, Quentin Johnston receives 10 targets, catches 5 of them for 42 yards. Ladd McConkey continues his run. He's been excellent from a fantasy standpoint recently. The wide receiver 4 over the past 5 weeks, and if you zoom out and look over the course of the season, he is now a wide receiver 1, number 12 in that ranking. Keenan Allen, bummer of a performance. That's kind of how it's going to be. Ladd McConkey's the top dog, and then it feels like Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen will kind of oscillate between the second and third options. I would view them as flexes. Disappointing day for Oronde Gadsden. Seemed like a pretty good matchup. Couldn't take advantage of it. Left with an injury, but silver lining here, he was second on the team with 6 targets, just as many as Ladd McConkey. Assuming he comes back and is healthy, still the guy that we've viewed him as over the past 5 weeks. Since week 6, he's tight end 2. Digging into the Raiders-Broncos game a little bit, Ashton Genty, kind of a rough day from a real-life standpoint, had a ball bounce off his hands that led to a pick. Still has 24 opportunities, including 5 targets. A low-end RB2 over the past 5 weeks. I think he's going to finish a bit higher than that. Think high-end RB2, low-end RB1, which is what he ranks over the course of the season, running back 11. From a receiver standpoint, I'm not excited about anyone. No one ranks inside the top 50 the past 5 weeks. Brock Bowers, I know it was a bummer, but I'm starting him every week regardless. This does not faze me. This does not move me. For the Broncos, J.K. Dobbins' injury is interesting and makes R.J. Harvey, I want to say, a must start. Over the past 5 weeks, he is the RB16, so a high-end RB2. Over the course of the season, he's 23rd, a low-end RB2. I'm totally fine calling Harvey a plug-and-play starter if J.K. Dobbins were to miss time, regardless of the matchup. And then it's pretty frustrating to watch Bo Nix play football recently. Not trying to kill him. Not sure if he's being held back from the play calling or is the play calling a symptom of trying to protect the team from his inability to hit certain throws. But over the past 5 weeks, Troy Franklin is the guy. 8 targets a game. Courtland Sutton's getting 5.6. I'm a believer in Courtland Sutton, the player. I think he's the better player than Troy Franklin. It's hard to feel super optimistic. I would see if I could go buy Courtland Sutton in case things do get better, because they got to be feeling pressure like nobody else right now to get things right. And if they are going to get things right, Courtland Sutton is going to have to be a big part of that. So that's all I got for you guys. We'll put a preview out heading into week 11. It's insane that we're this far into the season. I've had a ton of fun. Again, I appreciate all the input and the feedback that you guys give me. Any sort of feedback to make this better, to make any of my content better, please let me know. I don't always respond to everything, but I do see just about every comment and every message. So it all helps. It all leads to a better product, I think. If you still haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. please and thank you. And then drop a follow on TikTok if you hadn't, at lukefit.g. We're putting out a bunch of content there every week and starting to do the same here on the old YouTube. So thank you guys. I really appreciate you all. You have an excellent rest of your day. Hopefully you got a dub this week, and I will catch you soon. That's it for now. Deuces.